Hi, everybody. I'm Karla. I'm an alcoholic. Hi. And thank you, Steve, for that introduction. I was just thinking, well, when I got here, I really didn't know how to say no. So that worked in my favor in Alcoholics Anonymous, and sometimes your character defects are helpful. So anyway, I made some notes. I told my sponsor I'm not going to make notes. I'm going to let God be in charge. And then I just realized that I just don't trust God that much, I guess. I don't know. I had to make some bullet points for myself just to keep me on track. And they're folded up in here. Maybe I won't even look at them. But I was in the meeting last night, and we were reading from Experience, Strength, and Hope. And the author said, I'm not well, but I'm better. And that's me. I'm not well yet, but I'm better. I'm a lot better than I was when I got here. And that was on June 10th, 2002. That's my sobriety date. And I have a sponsor, and I also sponsor women. I'm going to open my notes. So what it was like. So my drinking was a lot of times alone. I was a secret drinker. I I come from a well-to-do family. My father was self-made. My parents were poor. They came from the Depression, but he was an intelligent man and a hard worker. And I had everything you could ask for materially. We had a nice house. We lived in a nice neighborhood. I went to private school. Um, but I just didn't quite feel like I belonged. And I hear that a lot in Alcoholics Anonymous. And part of that for me, some of the things that made me feel that way, I was adopted as an infant, as were my brothers. And that made me feel like I didn't have my tribe. My dad, his mother was from Sweden, so he was a first generation Swedish American, and he was very proud of that. That was part of his identity. And I so wanted that. I wanted to be Swedish. um, and I had this little friend, Cheryl, and she's like, you can't say you're Swedish because you're adopted. And I was just like, whatever. She's like, my family is German, and our name was Bischoff before we came to America. They changed it to Bishop. And so, I mean, it's like things like that. I felt like, okay, I'm not good enough. I wanted to be Catholic. I knew that was a cooler religion, but we were Protestant. I just felt like I was super sensitive. I was just like, nothing was quite right. My clothes, I had to wear cotton because polyester, which there was a lot of in the 70s, just didn't feel right. And I was just kind of a shy, sensitive kid. And in my house, I had a stay-at-home mom who was very nice, and she had no boundaries. And so I was free to do whatever. And then I had a dad who was quit drinking 2 years before I was born, but he never was never involved in Alcoholics Anonymous. He was a workaholic, and he had ideas about what kids should be doing, but unfortunately he was never home. So my mom was running the show. And when he was home, I would break the rules, not knowing there were rules that I was breaking, and I'd get in trouble. And I knew even as a child that this was not quite right. It was not fair that I would get in trouble for something I didn't even know I wasn't supposed to do. So that's kind of this is how my life was. This was how I grew up. And when I have skinny arms and skinny legs, and I carry all my weight in the middle. And so when I was a little kid, I had kind of a tummy like this, and little kids are really mean, and they would say, why does your stomach stick out like that? And when I was like 15, I was overweight, and my dad was too. And so he was going to go to this fat camp in Utah, and he wanted to bring me, and I was like, sure, I'll go because I don't want kids asking me why my stomach is sticking out. And when we were there, I heard him telling my mother, I just want to help Karla because she's never going to be able to get a man. And I don't know, at the time, I was like, what a jerk. But I internalized that shit, and I've never been without a man, I'll tell you that. Because that was what it was all about. I needed to have a man to be a success in life. So this is the person I am. And it was when I was there that I started secretly eating. I lost weight. I was 140. I was like almost 5'9" and 140. They said, you need to lose 20 more pounds. And I was just like, what the fuck? Oh, there I did it. I was just like, I can't. I don't, and as an adult, I'm like, what were you telling this kid? That's wrong. 120 is way too skinny for me. Anyway, so I started secretly eating, and this is kind of how my life is. A lot of secrets, secretly eating and, keeping secrets from my childhood. There was a lot of secret keeping in the neighborhood. There was just things we were doing that we had to keep it a secret. And that's kind of part of my growing up about who I am. So when I was 15 and we walked down to the park by my house, Garfield Park, and I funneled that beer down my throat, that felt like, wow, this feels really good. I really like this, and I need to keep it a secret because it feels so good. And my friend Cheryl was with me, and I knew that we had to keep our shit together because we didn't want to ruin this, and it was time to go home. I guess I did have some boundaries. I knew it was time to go home, and she didn't, and she wasn't going to go home. And so I went home and left Cheryl at the park. And my mom is like, have you been drinking? And I was like, no, never admit it. Never, ever admit it. One time I left some marijuana on the coffee table because I was too stoned to remember to put it away. And my mom found it, and I was like, where is that? And she had it, and she showed it. Is this yours? No. I'm holding on to that for somebody. I mean, we never, ever admit what's happening. So, I was in private school with a bunch of rich kids, and there was a lot of drugs going around. There was, and my friend's sister dated the drug dealer. So I had this connection with the drug dealer, and it was easier to get drugs than it was to get alcohol. We would drink every weekend. My friend Cheryl would be like, Karla's always drunk. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't we be drunk if we're going to a party where we're drinking? And besides, you're sleeping with everyone's boyfriend. Which I probably would have too if they wanted to sleep with me, but I was chubby. And so it's like, whatever. But I had this connection, this drug connection, and I could get the good drugs. And sometimes my friends would want me to buy, not my friends, but the people in my class would want me to buy it for them. And I would, okay, I'll buy it for you. How much you want? And then I would take a little tip for myself. So I was stealing from these people who wanted to buy drugs through me. I didn't have to make amends for that. My sponsor said that was just par for the course. I would steal money from my dad. He would carry a lot of money. It made him feel good, I guess. I would steal a lot of money. I would steal from the stores, and I would give the things I shoplifted to other people because I wanted them to like me. That's really what I wanted more than anything. I barely graduated from high school. I started out really strong, and then I started going to this private school with a bunch of smart kids, and I started drinking and doing drugs and not going to school, and I didn't do well. I didn't do very well at all, but I got into college by the skin of my teeth, thanks to going to private school, I think. And that was like my very first geographical. I was going to shape up. I was afraid I'd flunk out of college. That would be too shameful. So I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to do drugs at college. And that lasted, I think, the first semester. And then I met these people that had marijuana and alcohol. And they were like me. They drank like me. The first semester, I was with a bunch of squares who did not know how to drink. And if you're an alcoholic and you're with people who don't have enough alcohol, there's really no point in drinking at all. Because once you start, there's not enough. So I just didn't drink until I found the people who knew how to do it. And then I started doing it again. So that geographical didn't work. I graduated. And after I graduated, I came home. I took a year off to get my portfolio ready to apply to grad school. And during that time, my oldest brother, I had two older brothers, Eric and Bjorn, and my oldest brother, he was killed in a car accident. And it was pretty devastating for my family. My parents, that aged them. And for me, it was like the first time that I really understood powerlessness. There's really nothing you can do when someone's dead. There's nothing. I mean, it was like, I can't change my ways. I can't be good. I can't do anything. He's just gone. And when I was thinking about doing this talk, I was dreaming. I was dreaming that my husband was having an affair with someone in AA, and my brother was there, who died, and he gave me this hug, and I was crying, and I mean that was kind of cool. I think about my brother now that I'm old, and I think, God, what would it be like if he were still here? I think he would have liked to have been old too. Um, but anyway, he died, and he had this double indemnity life insurance policy made out to my other brother who shared it with me. So when he died, I got money, and a few years later when my dad died, I got more money. So that's I've never needed money. I've always, got money. Which isn't, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that. I'm not going to give it away, but I don't know how good it is to be given money. I'm not sure that that's really helpful, especially if you're an alcoholic or a drug addict. Another thing that happened around that time was I asked my boyfriend, my first boyfriend that I met in college, to marry me because what else are we going to do? Get married or break up? I don't know. So we decided to get married, and I decided to try to get pregnant right away because I was so sure that I'd done so many drugs and so much alcohol that wouldn't happen. And it happened right away because I was like 23 or something. I had quit doing cocaine by that point because that made me suicidal. I had pretty much stopped smoking pot. That made me paranoid. And I had alcohol, which is so nice because there's quality control. And you can get it. You have to go to the store, but I mean, you don't have to call anyone. There's no secret. There's no meeting anyone in the parking lot. Alcohol was just this thing, this magic little thing. And anyway, I got pregnant and I stopped drinking because I'm blessed that I was able to stop drinking because I knew that I couldn't drink and be pregnant. And I had that baby and my life was complete. That little girl was I just loved her and I was going to be a good mom. I was going to do all the things that my mom didn't. I just was complete. And it was I was able to do that for about 3 or 4 months. And then I would breastfeed her and I'd have a little drink after, because she'd sleep for a while. And then the insidiousness of it just creeped back in to where I eventually was drinking every day. Every day in the afternoon, I'd start drinking. And I didn't tell you that, I was a big fantasy person. I lived in my head and I would be drinking with the people on the TV and living in my head. And, you know, with kids, it's kind of like that I felt like I'm not hurting them, I'm not beating them, I'm not doing this or that or the other, but I'm not there with them. I'm not present with her. Um, so I decided when she was about 2.5, I should get pregnant again, and because that's how I stopped drinking, to get pregnant. And I I got pregnant again, and I just wasn't going to start again. And then right after he was born, like day 2, I started drinking, and it's just like I just couldn't stop myself. I couldn't stop. And we did some more geographicals after that. I went to Europe, went to school, did more school. We lived in California. Um, Nothing cured me. It always came back to, you want a drink? Sure, I'll have a drink. And then I'd be drinking eventually on a daily basis, starting in the afternoon was my time. It was like I could make it till after noon. It's like, remember my middle son, my oldest middle son was in preschool, and I could drink one drink before I picked him up, and then I could get home, and then I could drink. So I was the housewife who drank at home, and that it was just that over and over every day. And I knew that it wasn't right what I was doing, but I didn't know I was alcoholic. I thought I was just a bad mom. I thought I was just a bad person. And what happened was I started sleeping with a coworker, um, and my husband found out, and we got a divorce. You know, we were going to try to make it work, but this coworker of mine, my second boyfriend, he it was like he was my new addiction. I didn't even have to drink that much because I was so like focused. It was like a freight train out of control. And I put him ahead of everything. I put him ahead of that daughter of mine that was made me whole. I put him ahead of, my marriage. And I have a lot of regrets about how that happened. And if you're thinking about having an affair, think again and break off that first relationship first, because he didn't deserve that. He was nice. He was a good guy. He was a caretaker. He took care of me. Um, and he didn't deserve that. He didn't deserve to have his life blow up because I was bored, whatever was going on with me. Um, and my new boyfriend, he said to me, I think you might have a drinking problem. And I was like, what? Maybe that's what's happening. And so I enrolled in treatment, and I did the kind where you don't live there, you just go after work. And I was pretty crazy at the time, actually. I was super fit. I was running 5 miles a day, and I wasn't eating. And once I stopped drinking, I started eating, and I would get off from work and I would I would get a bag of Doritos and a bag of candy, and I'd alternate because salt and sugar together were good. And I did this on the way to treatment. And I started gaining weight, and I hated that. I hated that because I would lose the man if I did that. I would lose him. So I was filled with self-loathing and fear. And at treatment, they were like, you have to get some self-esteem. You can't live like this. You're going to drink again. But they didn't tell me what to do to get self-esteem. I was like, okay, I need self-esteem. So they said, you got to go to 2 AA meetings a week. I made it to one because that was so scary. That was way, way scary. I didn't speak. I went to this women's meeting, Woodland Park Women, and I didn't speak. I did get a sponsor. I did do the steps with her, but I was different, Everyone in the meeting liked to talk. I figured that they're just our talkers, and I'm not a talker, and I'm not going to share you a lot about myself because you might not like me. You might judge me. So I did that, and then I relapsed. I came across, I was opening a drawer, and there was some drugs in there, and I just took them before I could change my mind. And I was like, oh shit, I relapsed. And then I thought, oh, if I get pregnant, I'll stop. And I did. I got pregnant with my boyfriend, who was now my fiance, and he proposed to me this time. And so I got pregnant. I didn't need to go to AA because I'm pregnant now. And I went from, so I didn't drink, but once he was born, I went from a daily drinker to a secret binge drinker now, because the secret's out. The secret's out that I drink too much, so I gotta hide it more. And these binges would be like a month apart, and then it would be 3 weeks apart, and then it would be 2 weeks apart, and then I found out I was pregnant again. And I was like, oh shit. So I went to the store and I got a pregnancy test and a 12 pack, or maybe, yeah, a 12 pack. And I decided I better take the pregnancy test first. And I did that, and I was so like, I had a 6-month-old. So I was like, oh my God, I can't be pregnant again. And I didn't drink because I'm lucky that way. Um, and and we had that baby. That's my baby Hans. And but the same thing happened again once he was born. I started this thing where I drank just once a month and every 3 weeks, every 2 weeks. It just same old, same old, same old, same old, again and again and again. And I had a really bad drinking episode, and I'm like, okay, I got to go to AA every day, and I have to talk, and I have to be of service. And so I started doing that, and I went to AA every day, and I talked. But I didn't make it my life. I had my life and then AA over here. And I remember when my cousin Craig got married when I was young, and he was in Alcoholics Anonymous, and my mother said that at his wedding was all these AA people, and that when you're in AA, you have to be only friends with AA people. And so I was like a little concerned. So I had this separate life, and guess what? When I stopped going to meetings as much because I got busy doing other stuff, and when the shit hit the fan, I picked up again. And I I was on a 10-day binge. I think I was 10 days, and I don't remember much of it. But I do remember that last day, my husband's day off, and I he was mad at me. He didn't want me to be doing that, and I didn't know how not to do that. And I was sitting outside. I threw my beer bottle in the backyard, and I was like, I got it. I got it. And it's like this thing, I had been to AA. So there's this thing in Bill's story. He says, now, because we're dramatic this way, I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. And I got it. I got that I was in that procession. Maybe I wasn't at the end. Maybe I wasn't dying from alcoholism tomorrow, but I was headed, that was the way I was headed. There was no going back. And there's also this part in Dr. Bob's Nightmare. This is another part that I like. Oh, it's in the red. He says, I was between Scylla and Charybdis now, because if I did not drink, my stomach tortured me, and if I did, my nerves did the same thing. And my stomach wasn't torturing me, but my nerves definitely were, and I didn't know what to do. And Scylla and Charybdis, just a little lesson here, are two legendary sea monsters in Greek mythology, positioned on opposite sides of the narrow water. Commonly identified as the Strait of Messina between Italy and Sicily, they represent an impossible choice: to continue drinking and on that procession, or to stop and go insane because I need the drink just to be able to survive. That wire, that spring inside of you when you trying not to drink, and then that's why it would go from 1 month to 3 weeks to 2 weeks to every day. So I got that. And that was and I'm an alcoholic. So do you think I asked for help? No. What I did was I started cutting on my wrist, but I wasn't really wanting to kill myself. That would be, but I think I wanted help. I think that's what I wanted. I wanted my husband to feel sorry for me and to go, oh, let me help you. And he called 911 and they took me to Harborview. And they figured out I wasn't suicidal and I wasn't overdosing. And I came home and I had a plan. I had a plan. I'm going to go to, oh my God, I have 4 minutes. I had a plan. And what was my plan? I'm going to go to AA every day. I'm going to speak in meetings. I'm going to call my sponsor. I'm going to be of service. And my husband said, no, I want you to go to treatment. And I sighed out and I said, okay. And I went to treatment because I gave up. I gave up with my plan. And so what happened was I went to treatment. I got a sponsor who scared me. And she made me go, it wasn't Austria, it was another one, another scary one. And she had me going to 90 meetings in 90 days, and I was of service. And that was, what a blessing. I didn't get it at the time. I thought, oh my God, that's so hard. But I heard so much in those meetings that it wasn't just my sponsor who was keeping me sober. It was all those people in all those meetings, and I went through the steps with that sponsor, and then she went crazy after about 4 years, and I love her to death. We're friends today. I got a new sponsor, and we went through the steps again, and I had a new experience, and I understood that I was part of this. I was part of this. I was the sandwich. I was in there. I understood that she understood me, and I understood that because I understood my sponsee. And I didn't get that before. I thought people were just patting me on the back, being nice, but they didn't really understand. And for me, so Steve, going back to Steve, a huge part of my sobriety has been to be of service because I couldn't say no. So I would say yes. And uh, when I had 2 years of sobriety, I was a GSR, and it was there that I learned I was not. I suffered from this thing from high school of thinking I wasn't very smart and that I didn't know what was going on. And when I was a GSR, lo and behold, I realized I wasn't the only one that didn't know what was going on. And I actually knew more than some people knew. And I was like, oh my God, okay. Then I was the archivist for our district, and I learned about some of the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was really cool. And then I was eventually the DCM, and that was where I learned that I could start mentoring alcoholics. I wasn't a newcomer anymore. I mean, there's something wonderful about being the star. The newcomer is the star. We're all like telling them how to do stuff and let us take you here. Now it was my turn to do that, and I learned how to do that. I'm still working on that relationship with a higher power. I'm still working on trust, trusting that my higher power won't drop me on my head. Some days for me, it's good, orderly direction. Some days for me, it's something more. So it's the natural world, It's but what's happening for me now after these many years is I'm kind of seeking a deeper step 11, a steeper daily contact. I'm reaching for emotional sobriety, and what's interesting that's come after all these years is that I have this gratitude. For many years, I was like, grateful? I don't know. How do you be grateful if you're not grateful? I mean, life is hard. Why would I be grateful? Today, it's like, through doing all this work and all these things, I have these feelings. I can be grateful for the pillows I have on my bed. Oh my God. I can be grateful. I'm so grateful for all the friends that I have in my life. I'm restored to sanity. I don't drive by liquor stores. I used to see the liquor store and all these shiny bottles were like magic bottles, That doesn't happen anymore. They're not magic bottles to me anymore. They're not going to help me. I'm going to be longer, a few minutes.
Yeah, let me just.
Okay. And so I'm no longer today, after 23 years, I'm no longer acting as if, which I did for a long time. I acted as if, and I did the work and I lived according to these spiritual principles, and I trusted that my life would become more spiritual and I'd have a higher power. And today I'm having that. I'm having this gratitude that I didn't have before. I found my biological father. He died 2 weeks after I talked to him on the phone. And guess what? He wasn't Swedish. He was not Swedish. He was German, from Germany. So, Cheryl. And there's this thing I wanted to, so I don't have to keep secrets today. I don't have to keep, I lied about everything just to make sure that you liked me. I would watch you and see what I thought you would think, and I would say it so that you would like me. And today, I can be me, and I don't have to be a secret. And there's this thing that Carl Jung, I don't know if he said it, but it was his kind of thing that he said about loneliness. And I wanted to read that to you because it says, loneliness is not the absence of people around us, but the inability to express what truly matters within us. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been able to truly express what really matters within me with other people. And if you want to know more about Carl Jung, talk to me afterwards. He was important in the founding of our program. So now I'm done.